Yandere Clicker was the first ever Yandere Simulator spin-off that was created. The game itself is a Yandere Simulator themed parody of Cookie Clicker. Essentially, the player takes on the role of Ayano Aishi, who stabs Senpai every time they click their mouse. Doing this allows the player to buy upgrades, which helps increase the number of stabs given to Senpai. Here is a list of every upgrade that can be unlocked on Yandere Clicker. Anyway, the game itself was released on April 16, 2014, and only featured the player being able to stab Senpai. All of the upgrades mentioned earlier were added 3 days later on April 19th. One can also earn achievements in the game, each of which costs a different number of stabs. All in all, Yandere Clicker is a simple Yandere Simulator spin-off game that exists. Kudere Simulator is the second Yandere Simulator spin-off game that exists. It was released on April 1st, 2015, which probably gives away the intention behind the game. Anyway, the premise of the game is practically the opposite of Yandere Simulator. The player takes on the role of Kudere, who is apathetic and unemotional. She simply sits on a chair and states they do not want a senpai. If one presses the T button on their keyboard, Kudere will switch to Tsundere-chan. She says the exact same dialogue as Kudere, except in a more annoyed and louder tone. This is in character with the tsundere trope, in which a tsundere will be aggressive towards those they like, attempting to hide their romantic feelings towards those they like. Speaking of the tsundere character, pressing the B button on the keyboard will make her say baka, which is also associated with the tsundere character trope.
Baka!
One other thing about Kudere Simulator that needs to be noted is that Kudere's appearance is a reference to Rei Ayanami, a character from Neon Genesis Evangelion. As for Tsundere-chan, her appearance is based on the character Asuka Lenguisorio, another character from Neon Genesis Evangelion. While we're talking about Neon Genesis Evangelion, the icon for Kudere Simulator is a picture of Rei Ayanami. This is likely the biggest giveaway of the character's inspiration. Kudere made an appearance in a video titled I Want My Senpai Back, where she talks to Ayano. Kudere eventually became a real character in Yandere Simulator. Super Yandere 64 was the third Yandere Simulator spin-off that was created. Since it was released on April 1st, 2015, you can probably tell what kind of game this was. Anyway, in Super Yandere 64, the player takes on the role of Ayano Aishi. They can roam around the map and collect coins, stomp on enemies, and die. It is impossible to actually win Super Yandere 64, which is somewhat unusual. If anyone is wondering why the map looks familiar, it's because Super Yandere 64's map is a remake of Bob-omb Battlefield, the first world of Super Mario 64. It is specifically an HD remake of said map. Some extra trivia about Super Yandere 64 is that the maximum amount of coins that can be held is 999, and that Nintendo likely won't take action against the game due to it being free. Exactly 1 year after its release, a sequel to Kudere Simulator was published, named Kudere Simulator 2. In terms of its premise, it's nearly identical to that of the first Kudere Simulator. I say nearly because there's one big difference. Instead of there being 2 characters, there are 3. They are Kudere, Tsundere, and Himedare. For those who don't know, a Himedare is an anime character trope that involves someone who initially behaves in an arrogant princess-like manner, expecting their partner to shower them with attention, but later softens up and becomes caring and affectionate in return. They're basically people who want attention at first, but soon become caring people to their love interest. Anyway, the player can press the H button to switch to the Himedare character. In addition, pressing the B button will make her say the following. Some other key differences include the ability to turn the character's head, change the color of the room, blinking, and going into first-person mode. One other thing that should be noted is that, like the first game in the series, Kudere Simulator 2 was released on April 1st of 2016, which basically gives away what kind of game it is. In April 2016, the 5th Yandere Simulator spin-off game was published, named Burning Love. It's not a game in a traditional sense, but rather a visual novel. Burning Love follows the player looking around Academia and finding a bloody knife. From here, a lot of events occur that change depending on what the player chooses. If the player chooses to pick up the knife, they'll then have the choice of either telling a teacher or putting it in the skull inside the occult club. This will then cause a flame demon to spawn, who asks the player why they are there. From here, they then have 3 choices to choose from, 2 of which end the game and 1 of which continues the story. In essence, the player has to take the flame demon on a date under the condition that if it goes badly, he takes the player's soul. Depending on what choices are made, the player will either receive a good or a bad ending. The good ending will show these options, while the bad ending results in the flame demon taking the player's soul. Something that should be noted is that Burning Love was supposed to be released on April 1st, 2016, the same day as Coup Dare Simulator 2. However, there were complications with the game, leading to it being released 9 days later. Honestly, the idea of a visual novel inspired by Yandere Simulator is pretty cool. What do you think? The sixth Yandere Simulator spin-off game, Yandere Tale, was released on October 30th, 2016. Based on the title, it becomes obvious that Yandere Tale is a parody and homage to the popular game Undertale. Anyway, in Yandere Tale, the player takes on the role of Ayano Aishi, who battles Okaruto in a similar fashion to the Sans boss battle in Undertale. This isn't surprising because, like we said earlier, Yandere Tale is an homage to Undertale. If anyone is curious, Yandere Tale took only 7 days to be made. It was going to have a lot more content in it, but development was restricted to take place within a 1-week period. Along with this, Yandere Tale is the second Halloween-themed game to be made related to Yandere Simulator. It's safe to say quite a few Yandere Simulator spin-off games were released in 2016 alone. Exactly 1 year after the release of its prequel, the third and final game of the Coup Dare Simulator franchise was published, named Coup Dare Simulator 3. This marks the sixth Yandere Simulator spin-off that was created. Anyway, it is nearly identical to Coup Dare Simulator 1 and 2 in terms of gameplay. You're probably wondering what I mean by nearly identical. Well, there's one very big difference. In Coup Dare Simulator 3, the player can press the L button to spawn Osana Najimi, the first rival in Yandere Simulator. However, the best part of Coup Dare Simulator 3 is that if the player presses the spacebar on their keyboard, the character they're playing as will bring out a gun and shoot Osana. Yeah, you heard that right. Here's proof.
You can't rely on me to wake you up every day.
Within a 2-year span, the Coup Dare Simulator franchise got 3 installments, all of which were released on April 1st between 2015 and 2017. The third Halloween-themed game and 8th Yandere Simulator spin-off game was released in 2017, named Midori Forest. Its concept is an homage to the iconic horror game Slender the 8 Pages. Do any of you guys remember that game? In Midori Forest, the player takes on the role of a video game developer who has to collect 10 laptops in the middle of a dark forest. This has to be done within a 217-second time limit, all while being chased by Midori Gurin. If the player gets attacked by Midori, and the game ends. One notable fact about Midori Forest is that it was created in only 2 nights. Talk about efficiency. In addition, the animations used for Midori are the same ones used for Fun Girl in Yandere Simulator. Essentially, Midori Forest is a Yandere Simulator themed parody of Slender the 8 Pages. The 9th Yandere Simulator spin-off game to be published is Yandere Dev's Greatest Nightmare, which was released on October 31st, 2018. Going in order, this game is the 4th Halloween-related spin-off of Yandere Simulator. The premise of this game is that the player roleplays as Yandere Dev, who has to shoot at obstacles with a gun while running around Academy. They need to collect 250 points located within the school to defeat Amai Odayaka. Well, the number needed to defeat Amai can be changed, but Yandere Dev's Greatest Nightmare is no longer getting updated. Anyway, the environment the game takes place in is very dark, which makes sense as it takes place within Yandere Dev's Nightmare. In addition, the player has to shoot down running versions of Midori Gurin and Itachi Zamitora. Doing this will increase the score earned by the player. If the player manages to defeat Amai after shooting her 25 times, she will say the same quote from her rival introduction video. One fun fact about Yandere Dev's Greatest Nightmare is that putting in the code Bijou into the extras menu will turn the player into YouTuber Bijou Mike. The 10th Yandere Simulator spin-off game to be released is Yandere no Sudoku, published on October 31st, 2020. This also makes it the 5th Halloween-related Yandere Simulator spin-off game. Anyway, the game is a parody of Psycho no Sudoku, a game where the player has to escape a school while being chased by a male or female yandere. In Yandere no Sudoku, the player can choose to escape Ayano or Ayato Aishi in Academy. This is done by finding the key for the exit within Academy, all while avoiding the yandere. Something interesting about Yandere no Sudoku is that it marks the official debut of the character Ayato Aishi. In addition to this, based on the game over screens in Yandere Simulator, it is implied that in Yandere no Sudoku, Senpai rejected Ayano or Ayato. To be honest, original Psycho no Sudoku featuring Ayano Aishi was inevitable. The 11th Yandere Simulator spin-off game to be published is Yanvenia 2022. It is a remake of Yonvania Senpai of the Night, which was published back in 2015. That game, however, is not a spin-off. Anyway, the story of Yonvania 2022 is that Beldera-chan is a student at the Academia Institute, a school for young witches and wizards. One night, she arrives at the institute to discover that all of her teachers and classmates have been killed and transformed into zombies. As Beldera-chan fends off attacks from the reanimated corpses, she begins traveling through the school to search for answers. Who did this? How? And is there any chance that the boy she loves is still alive inside the school somewhere? It is essentially an updated and remade version of Yonvania Senpai of the Night, as we stated earlier. The goal of this game is to collect 10 keys that can be used to open a treasure chest in one of the corners of the map. Something that does need to be noted is that this game is just a prototype, meant to showcase the overall feel that Yonvania would have. Why is this the case? If Yonvania was turned into a complete game, this prototype showcases what it'd be like. Make sure to like and subscribe for more Yandere Simulator content.